What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Local Crown podcast, where we're going to teach you how to wage war on your competition and earn your local crown, also known as the top spot on Google. Today I'm coming at you with my man, Michael Alden. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do and why you do it for the people who don't know you, my man?
Hey, well, thanks so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. Well, geez, I always have trouble answering that question. What exactly do I do? Well, and I finally just come to the realization that I'm an entrepreneur. Okay. I'm a lawyer by trade. And I've been an entrepreneur since day one, though, before I was a lawyer. I was the kid that was selling lemonade, at the end of the street, and I franchised it and had multiple lemonade stands with my friends and having paper outs and shoveling, snow in the winter. So I'm just, again, that classic entrepreneur. And I just love business. And so whether it be, helping people, with their books, or whether it be writing books, is which kind of my thing. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal USA Today bestselling author. Or is it building businesses, to 9 figures? I mean, my businesses have generated hundreds of millions of dollars. But at the same time, I'm also as real as it gets. I don't sugarcoat things. I let people know that, being an entrepreneur and the life of an entrepreneur is not easy. So that's kind of like the quick little Reader's Digest version of kind of who I am and where I'm at now. And maybe we'll get into some more.
Awesome, man. Well, I definitely want to get into a little bit more. Who were you before you were Mike the lawyer?
So that's a great question, man. So I was Mike, the kid that grew up in the projects. My mom's HIV positive. My stepfather died of AIDS. My father was addicted to coke. Kid I grew up with was in jail for life for murder. One of my brothers did time for distribution. Another brother died of an overdose. My stepmother just recently died of an overdose. Another brother was in rehab for a heroin addiction. And I wasn't the best kid either. What I was lucky about though is I never, smoked a cigarette, never did any drugs, and wasn't really kind of like my thing. And sports and athletics really kind of kept me out of trouble. And I joke around with some of the people that that happen to still be around from where I grew up, and the difference is I just didn't get caught, so I was pretty lucky there. And then there was a point in my life where I just, made a decision when I was about 15 years old that, I was either going to be a criminal or I was going to somehow be in the legal community, whether that be a police officer or something. But I just knew that I wanted to be a lawyer. So, I'm still that kid from the projects though, and people say, and it's kind of weird at 45 years old, I still have that chip on my shoulder, but I use that chip on my shoulder to my advantage. Everyone that I've known since I was a kid that, that didn't really necessarily know me personally, but they saw me from the outside, they were all kind of rooting against me, and they're still rooting against me. And so, again, I use that kind of as like my superpower. When people talk about adversity builds strength, that's a real thing. And one of my first books, Ask More, Get More, the first line I say is, thank God I was born poor. So, that's who I was. I still harness that, but it's not who I am. Right. A lot of times people say, don't forget where you came from. I never forget where I came from, but I'm not going to stay there.
Awesome, man. So having gone from the kid from the projects to having one of the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies, being on TV, having a top rated podcast, like where did all the confidence come from to be able to make all those massive shifts?
Yeah, dude, you're like nailing the questions, man. So it's really a 2-part answer. I'm not always confident. And I portray that image of confidence, but a lot of times deep down inside, I'm scared. And a lot of people won't admit that, So, Zig Ziglar talks about fear, false evidence appearing as real. But, fear is actually a real thing, that also if you use it the right way, you can harness that fear, just like that, that chip on my shoulder as a kid, and use it to your advantage. So, when you start to, get into your entrepreneurial career, you really have no choice but to be confident in your actions. One of the things that I always tell people is if I'm, I am a gambling man, and if I'm going to gamble or bet on anybody, I'm going to bet on myself. But that confidence, takes time. I think there's a difference between being, and I talk about this a lot, being optimistic. A lot of entrepreneurs were just overly optimistic, and it's not a bad thing, but you also have to have a dose of realism in there. And so I have both of those. So when things are going wrong, which happens to be all the time, like you and I were just talking before we recorded, I'm realistic about that and understand that, that things are going to go wrong. It's not going to be easy. But I also have that optimism knowing that, if you can make it through, you will have brighter days and things will get better.
Absolutely, man. So I gotta ask, like, you wrote a book called The Blueprint to Business. You have, according to Inc., you have one of the fastest growing companies, like 3 years in a row. Like, just tell us, like, what is it that makes a successful business to you, man?
Yeah. So it's funny you ask, because, we're on this app called Clubhouse, and there's a lot of people flexing, and saying things like, again, 8 figures, 9 figures, 7 figures, whatever the numbers are. And everyone talks a big game. And I'm one of those guys. I talk about, hundreds of millions in revenue, and so the definition of success is a fluid, definition, and it changes for everybody. And it means something different for everybody. And for the longest time, when I was younger, when I first started my business in 2008, in the worst economy in the history of the world up until now, for me, success was growth. It was, having a big company and having people around and doing, tens of millions a year after year in revenue. But as I get older, I've had mentors and, kind of teach me these lessons that it's not necessarily about that. It's not about that gross revenue. It's about how much you can keep. And it was a hard lesson for me because those years when I was doing 50, 60 million a year, I don't think we did 60, but we got close to 60 one year. I was losing money and I didn't realize it because I didn't have accountants and a bunch of people that, in the finance world that were showing me. I just saw the revenue and I saw this money coming in. And then there were times when I was like, my career was in my business was almost completely shut down because I was caught off guard because I owed this guy $1 million and this guy 700,000. And it's like, how do you not know that? I was on Grant Cardone's show back in the day called, what was it called? It was called, I forget what it's called. Power Players, it was called. And, he asked me that question that year. We did like 50 million in revenue. And he was like, how much of that did you keep? And I didn't have the answer, so success to me and you and to your viewers and to your listeners are different, but I think ultimately as you get older, as I start to get older and I think about success, for me, it's more about that freedom to be able to do what you want when you want. And it doesn't necessarily mean money. And I think a lot of people are confused with that and think that, well, I need all this money in order to be happy or to be successful. No, because, one of the mentors I had mentioned, I owed him $700,000. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall. He actually literally came out of nowhere. I was never heard of him. I was dealing with his partner. Guy's name's Charles Parisi from Brooklyn. Looks like a gangster, talks like a gangster. And you know what? We're good friends now. And I still joke around with him and say that he probably is a gangster. And, when someone like that shows up on your doorstep, telling you that you now owe him $750,000, you start to really think about, what you're doing. And he said to me, Mike, congratulations. That year we did 33 million. He said, congratulations, you did 33 million. But what if I told you lost 2? And what if I told you if I could show you how to do 15 million and keep 2, which one would you choose? And I joked around and I said, I'll do the 15, I'll do the 30, so now I'm at this point where it's like success is about, how much you can keep in from a financial standpoint. But really my true definition of success is to be able to do what I want, when I want, and ultimately to be happy.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, email us at info@thelocalcrown.com. And if you want to get featured in our publication, Inside the Empire, alongside John Lee Dumas, the entrepreneur on fire, Jayson Waller, the CEO of Power Home Solar, Sharon Lechter, Dan Caldwell, the man that started Tap Out, and the limitless man himself, Kwik, for free, then head over to thelocalcrown.com/become a contributor.